Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you the latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. We're joined in this episode by Better Farm participant Francis Gonley and Programme Manager Dr. Frank Campion to talk a little bit about Francis' system and lamb finishing this autumn. Francis discusses grass growth, lamb performance this year, and we discuss his reasons for selling off the later store lambs in both the hill and lowland flocks. Frank discusses the level of performance that these long keep lambs achieve and how the system doesn't suit every farm. Francis comes back in and discusses his option for selling and finishing the remaining lambs on the farm this autumn. And we finish up with Frank and Francis highlighting the upcoming opening on the farm as well as what topics will be covered. We start off, however, with Francis giving us a bit of background to his lowland and hill farm system.
I have two flocks, a lowland and a hill flock. The lowland consists of approximately 100 ewes, crossbred ewes, and replacements to follow on. They're kind of, there's Suffolk cross and there's Texel cross in it at the minute. And the hill flock then, there's almost 200 ewes in it, plus replacements then along after that. Running towards a full black-faced Mayo flock there, there's a small amount of crossbred Cheviot ewes on it yet. They're being phased out. And once they're gone, they're just being replaced with black-faced ewes.
That flock has changed a little bit over the last couple of years. Was that kind of crisscross for in the early days we're working with you?
It was, yeah. It was pretty much 50-50, or maybe even slightly more towards the Cheviot ewes on it. They worked fine, but I decided that I just wanted to concentrate it on one stream there, so we headed towards the black-faced horned ewe, and it's working fairly well. They're good hardy sheep. They're grand for the hill, and it's working very well at the minute now.
And probably numbers have pushed up slightly since.
They have, yeah. I suppose I was down about 150, 170 there when I started into the program, and heading up towards 200 now on those. The quality, the dynamic of it has changed. I had a very old kind of a flock, and it's turned around now. There's a nice young flock in it now.
It's hard to keep the numbers on an aging flock. Look, last time we were chatting, you were making ewe lambs as well. Have you continued to do that, or in the lowland flock?
On the lowland, yes, I was. Yeah, I've done that for the last few years. This year, I was toying with the idea whether I take a break on it or carry on with it. At the moment, I haven't decided yet. I suppose it'll depend in October what the lambs are like. I suppose last year I got a bit of a sting in it, but it was probably my own fault. I might have put lambs was just slightly light for it to the ram. It worked great up to that. So this year I possibly go with it again, but I'm not 100% at the minute.
From memory, Francis, they were starting the lamb kind of 1st of April, more or less coinciding with the hill flock lambing as well. And I suppose just maybe to throw that had a complication, like the hill farm from your home farm, there's a bit of travelling between both.
Yeah, the hill farm is about 5 miles away. The lowland flock would be pretty much finished again the time the hill flock would be starting. Now I'd probably bring up the twins. I'd bring up all the twins from the hill, just lamb them in the shed just for ease of it. Singles would be left out, and then there was the ewe lambs on top of that. It worked all right now. There was no huge problems with it now.
Bit of a trade-off there for labour in spring as well, I suppose. It's still a consideration for you. Look, we might fast forward on a wee bit. Like Northwest this year, you've had a relatively good year. By comparison, our podcast last week where droughts kicked in, you haven't seen much of that. Just you might give us a kind of snapshot. How's the summer gone for you, grass-wise or performance-wise?
Grass-wise was no issue with the grass. There was loads of grass. Performance-wise, I suppose there was a slight little hiccup in that it was very wet. We had a very wet summer really here, and like even when the drought and all the heat waves was going on down the country, we were getting plenty of rain, so we were. And it's only in the last, I suppose, 3 weeks that it's really kicked off here. There's nice weather, there's intermittent showers, but it's no problem. I suppose from a performance point of view, the constant rain earlier in the year left the lambs getting very dirty behind. Were taking in a lot of water with their grass, and it just wasn't helping things. But as of late, it's kind of turned on its heels now. They've kicked off again, so they have now, and things are going all right now.
It was just a bit more challenging. I suppose like that lowland block of yours, ground would be heavy on it.
It'd be very heavy, all right. Yeah.
And like the hill this year, it's performed well.
The hill, there was no issue down there. The weather suited it down to the ground. It really took off this year. So the ewes there were taken. The lambs were weaned in the bank holiday weekend there in July, and the ewes then went off out the mountain. The mountain was in absolutely brilliant shape this year. Top of it there was a good cover on it, and the lowland part of it is recovering very well at the minute now. So I limed that there a couple of weeks ago, and it'll be all set for off again now later on.
Look, you talked about weaning the lambs in July. Tell me a little bit about what you've done sales wise with them before. So you take a slightly different strategy with this. So I suppose the lowland lambs, they've done well. You're aiming to finish them, Francis, maybe then the hill lambs. What do you plan to do with them?
The lowland lambs, I took off the lighter lambs, and I sold them as stores. And I done the same with the hill flock this year. I took off the lighter lambs and I've sold them off as stores. And the plan with what's left now is to finish them as quick as I can on grass. I put the feeder out with them, and what's left of the ewe lambs from the hill, I'll possibly bring them to the mart at a later stage, maybe in a couple of weeks' time, and test the waters there. I have secured a little bit of winter grazing there, where the lambs will possibly just move off this farm here to allow it to recover later on and concentrate on the ewes again for the ram. And that's where that stands there at the minute now.
So just maybe put in context, what kind of weight of hill lamb did you hold on to?
Approximately 30 kilos up. The horned ram lambs, there's good old frames on them, and I decided I'd keep them because usually from last year now, they ran into, they done fierce well for me, and they nearly done as well as the lowland flock in their own way. So obviously when you go to the market, them you're not getting premium money at stores, so I'll finish them all off, and that's kind of where I'm going with those guys. So
a lot of that, like even for the lowland flock, it was finish times was determined. So you took the option then of just letting off them light lambs out of the system, cut down your demand, but the realistic finish time on them was the main reason of selling them off.
It was, yeah. They were going to be long stayed ones, so it was just easier to take the pressure off the ground here and keep anything that was forward. So lowland flock, I suppose they're all 38 kilos up, and they're being pushed along there at the minute now.
They're going to finish. Frank, I'm just going to bring you in here at this point. Like that later lamb, pushing them on now, like we're heading into September, we're going to see supplementation going in a lot more on farms. You have to, with grass quality declining. That later lamb, the capacity of him to finish the kind of economics on that versus maybe letting him run on in the system and carrying him over into spring.
Yeah, so thanks, Kieran. So yeah, I suppose as Francis outlined there, that those lighter lambs, they're going to be hanging around a lot longer, and I suppose the temptation is, oh, we'll win and we'll throw meal at them and that'll solve the problem. But like we would have seen over the years with the store lamb finishing working at and right, and indeed with some of the work on the better farms, that those lighter lambs, even if you start feeding them now, they're still going to be hanging around the farm well into the autumn, into the winter. And really, you're not going to speed up their getting them off the farm that much quicker. And you're going to end up with a big concentrate bill hanging over that lighter type lamb. So the way that a lot of the better farmers are approaching this, and the way that we've seen with the store lamb work in Athenry, it works best in this situation, is to try and put as much frame under them as you can with the grass. So leave them ticking over on good quality grass, get them up to kind of 37, 38 kilos, somewhere within kind of 10 kilos live weight of your finishing or your target finishing weight, and then introduce some concentrates. And I suppose depending on the time of year, then the amount of concentrates you introduce is going to vary. So at the minute, a lot of the lads will be feeding at grass, so the lambs will be on grass to be getting about half a kilo a meal per head per day in troughs. And I suppose as the year goes on, then those lambs might be brought inside and put on ad lib meals once they hit the heavier weights to try and finish them and try and take them off the grass. I suppose the economics of feeding those lighter lambs at the minute is very questionable insofar as you're still going to end up feeding a meal for a long period of time into the winter at a very high cost.
So we're talking like 25 to kind of 30 kilo range. You really need to let them grow on, put a bit of frame there first before you start into finishing.
Yeah, you really do, Kieran. Like anything up to, certainly the less than 30 kilo ones really need to be framed up on grass or some sort of a forage. And realistically, until you get above that kind of 35 kilo live weight, the economics of putting the meal into them at this stage is questionable because, I suppose we have to be realistic in what a lamb can grow in a week. So there's 7 days in the week. If the lamb at the minute is doing, we were looking at some of France's lambs are doing about 130, 140 grams a day. So they're going to be doing around a kilo a week. Putting meal into them is not going to drive that up. So it's not going to double that or do anything close to it. So if we're adding that into a lighter lamb, regardless of the meal we're adding in, we're still not going to speed them up and get them gone in September, October. They're still going to be there in November, December, possibly January.
And look, there's going to be a bit of variation within that batch, but still perfectly fine lamb to work with later in the year. But just as you're saying, you need to let them put on a bit cheaper weight first.
Exactly, and look, the economics of this later on in the year are quite favorable, particularly if you have a lower stock farm where you're not under as much pressure in the autumn for ewes or other stock. We tend to see that the price of lamb tends to rise as we go into the winter. These lambs, if they haven't been pumped with meal all summer and autumn, have been relatively cheaply kept all summer and autumn. And then once you get into later in the year, you start to see them come into those weights that is more attainable to finish them from. And it's a bit of cash flow in the winter when cash flow on sheep farms and dry stock farms is typically lower. So it can fill a nice hole in that regard too if you're able to carry them.
So Franz, I want to bring it back to your system. Like you're going in, you have a finishing group. I think you were chatting me, you're set up at the moment. What's your plan for finishing with those lambs? You have a group being fed at the moment. The later ones you're running them on, and when will you house them?
Yeah, they're brought in their weight, and I suppose out of what's left there, anything that's in around the 40 to 42 kilo weight band, they're put into a group, and they're put on approximately, I suppose, almost a half a kilo of meal in troughs out in the field, and the rest of them are just moved along. And as they're, I suppose, they're weighed every 2 weeks, and as they're approaching their weights, they're drafted in and put with the finishing group.
At what point then, like, look, you've a lowland flock there, you're going to be worried about closing up for that. At what point do you house and go finishing indoors then?
Well, I suppose that really depend on the grass. Realistically, I suppose come the end of September, grass around here tends not to be that keen for growing. Temperatures get very low here, and grass can be a problem. So I suppose from there on in, the closer to come to finishing, the more inclined I'm to put them in. And if they got a couple of weeks in the shed on intensive lamb, we'll finish them off that way. But they'd have to be brought well up into the well used to feeding before I bring them in, because there's no point in bringing them in. And
no, you have them trained in that point. So you can look in late October on your house. Your aim with them, Francis, like you're hoping maybe to have them all gone tail end of the year.
Oh, what's left, everything should be gone by December, yeah.
Then you'll need the housing space for the ewes, I suppose, coming in at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so a bit of a balancing act there. Francis, look, we've kind of got a quick snapshot of what's going on the farm. There will be an opportunity this week for anyone listening to this podcast to go out and actually visit your farm. You have an open day coming up this Thursday evening. That's
right, yeah. This Thursday at 7:00. Yeah, there's an open day. We're hosting.
Frank, just with you, the time of that open day?
So yeah, we're kicking off at 7:00 in Francis' farm, and we're going to talk a bit about Francis', I suppose his flock setup and some of the performance of both the hill and the lowland flock this year. We'll chat a bit about his lamb performance and some of his grassland management during the year and how it's performed, and then we're going to talk a bit about anthelmintic resistance as well, and I suppose some of the facts around that and how people can try and avoid that problem on their farm.
All very topical.
And we'll have a cup of tea and a biscuit at the end of it too, if all the rest of the information doesn't entice you to come.
Always useful, so it's for a bit of a chat afterwards. Look, Francis and Frank, I'm going to leave you to it. Francis, you have a busy week ahead of you, plenty tidying up to be done, I'm sure, before the open day, but thanks very much for coming on and talking a little bit about your system.
Thanks very much, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran.
We're going to leave it there for this episode. So for anyone listening to this at time of release, the open day is on Francis Farm on Thursday the 1st of September at 7 p.m, and all are welcome. Well worth a visit, and there's details of the location on the Teagasc website under the events section. As with all the Better Farm participants, you can find out more about them on the Better Farm section on the Teagasc webpage and in the Teagasc Monthly Sheep newsletter. That's it for me for this episode. Again, for any updates on our sheep programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and get updates on any new episodes.